from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, where record temperatures are hitting the UK. 38 degrees, that's almost unheard of, but it's a perfect temperature for squeezing in a little bit of late night open air cinema and theatre, and I've managed to fit in a little bit of Bohemian Rhapsody and Midsummer Night's Dream. You could be forgiven for thinking that British politics is something of a surreal dream at the moment, or a nightmare depending on your perspective. New Prime Minister, an overhaul of government. And if you thought that England's World Cup win feels like a dream now, well, they've woken up in a state of shock now that they're into test mode. More on that to come.
Well, there's so much going on in the UK, Alison, but your temperatures don't impress me. I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio.
More Jim, I expect.
Yeah, sure. Certainly in Australia too, it can get pretty hot. Well, I'm happily ensconced in the Delhi BBC studios. And in terms of cricket, there's a fair amount of churn that continues in India about the team that is to tour the West Indies, particularly surrounding the keeper's slot and, of course, MSD. However, I'm in Delhi for the Ultimate Table Tennis League, which once again emphasizes that India may be the new home of multiple sporting leagues. It begins in a few hours, and I'm quite looking forward to it.
Jim Maxwell here for the ABC at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. High up in the stand here, looking down on the ground. What has been a temporary experience for most batsmen in this game, dominated by bowlers on a pitch that you'd have to say is a little uneven. The batsmen haven't really relished the chance to try and put their name up high on the scoreboard because they haven't been able to. But some of the bowling has been very impressive.
Jim Cherry, good to speak to you again. Last week, we asked whether England's men would suffer a hangover from their momentous Cricket World Cup win. Well, the answer has been a definitive yes.
Now here's Murtagh. It's edged and it's taken low at slip. And Roy is out.
Adair bowls. Denley trapped on the pad. He's given. Murtagh bowls to Burns, who edges through to the keeper, and he's gone now as well. Ireland on fire in this test match. Root inside edges it. They've gone up again. Mark Adair is pleading with Ruchira Pellegrini.
He's out. Wickets is hitting. There's Murtagh running away from us. And he's bowled him. Clean bowled. Johnny Bairstow left the gate open. This is astonishing stuff. Murtagh in, and that's hit the pad. Big appeal is out. He's got another one over the wicket. And that's the flare. It's a caught behind. Moeen Ali is gone. 43 for 7. And Moeen Ali has gone for a 7-ball down.
He's got an edge on it. He's out.
Spike next to the bat.
England are going to lose their 8th wicket. A terrific review.
Rankin starts a new over.
It was caught. Brilliantly caught at forward short leg.
There is in. And he's bowled him. The innings is over. England are dismissed before lunch at Lord's for the very first time in a test match. England are clattered and shattered and all out for 85.
Yeah, I did like that line from Michael McNamee. Clattered and shattered. Oh, can you believe it? That was England being bowled out for 85. 85 by Ireland at Lord's after Joe Root won the toss and opted to bat on the first morning of the test match. Ireland were then all out for 207, so a lead of 122. But this was only Ireland's 3rd ever test match. And, as far as ranking goes, this was supposed to be a nice, gentle warm-up match for England before the start of the Ashes series next week. Slot Jason Roy into the top of the order, see what he can do in the test arena, ease Root, Moeen and Bairstow back into the test game. But this was a huge occasion for Ireland always. And they spoke beforehand about the chances of catching England cold. Jim Maxwell, the floor is yours.
Well, Tim Murtagh's a Lord's specialist, isn't he?
Yep.
He's taken a bundle of wickets there. And in fact, I can remember him playing for my club in Australia many years ago. He would have played with a very young David Warner in 2004, and he got bags of wickets playing in Sydney club cricket. So it's no surprise, despite his curious Irish ancestry. I think it's his grandfather who has the connection. So what some countries will do to get hold of a player, but good on him for his performance. And it's been the most extraordinary thing sitting in the press box yesterday, watching wickets tumble here and watching them tumble in another place. And yes, there were a few smiles around the press box from the Aussies who were there watching this England debacle.
Yeah, Murtagh, 9 overs, 2 maidens, 5 for 13. So his name goes up on the honours board, although of course it's going to go up in the visitors' honours board at Lords. He spends all his time playing for Middlesex using the home dressing room, so it's a bit of a shame almost that he won't get to go in and kind of see it, day in, day out. But amazing. I mean, Charu, a World Cup hangover for England. Is that the case, or is there something, a little bit more worrying with only a week to go before the Ashes?
The former for sure. I mean, it's a hangover, and understandably so. I mean, there were celebrations, family moves and friends, you're having a great time. I can't blame the players. It could also be, and that's the only other factor, a result of a green top, because that's what I felt it was. And the pitch was obviously rested and repaired because of some level of overuse earlier on. And maybe the English captain, there was a little bit of bravado there saying, oh, we can handle Ireland. But I'm sure it was very difficult conditions for the batsman. And of course, Murtagh, we talked about the fact that he, any swing bowler will certainly use those conditions to maximum, and he did, because you can mesmerize batsmen who are a little short on full concentration.
Yeah, Tim Murtagh, as you mentioned, immaculate line and length. He just kept putting the ball there, nibbling. Just, he does what he's been doing for years on that pitch at Lords. And that fifer came in just over an hour. So it's just this incredible spell. And England's, their lowest total in 22 years in a home test match. So, absolute, you can say, full justification for Ireland being granted test status, because, every match they go into, they're looking to try and climb that ladder and to say, we're here and we can compete. And they more than competed on that day. Okay, Charu, the time has come. We need to talk about Dhoni. MS Dhoni. I've got to say that I'm rather struggling to keep pace with this one. So he's made himself unavailable for the tour of West Indies. Rumours are he'll be doing military service instead. There have been some cryptic comments from the Board of Control for Cricket in India about whether he would have been selected anyway. But then there are stories that he's been asked not to retire. Make sense of this one for me, please.
Well, a lot of it is obviously going to be conjecture, and I beg everybody else's forgiveness, because this could be just, my views. But, he is a maverick, and the way he retired in Australia from Test match cricket is a pointer to the fact that he really has a mind of his own. Now, the World Cup sadly didn't quite work out well for him. Not the fact that India didn't win, but just a couple of knocks where, he didn't win the love of fans because it was not Dhoni-esque in that, he didn't accelerate wildly, which is always, of course, not possible. But I just wonder why. There are a couple of situations here where the trend has been for these big stars to actually announce their retirement in India, because that then gets you into the circus of, felicitation and what have you at every ground, and everybody's going rah, 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 and he's there and people can see him. And so if you retire after some series overseas or wherever else, you don't get that massive send-off. And I wonder if his agents, his sponsors and others, after all, there is a lot of commercial activity, are the ones also influencing such a decision, saying, hey, hang on, Dhoni, nobody's going to sack you. We know that. So why don't you just end in India so we can all make a big meal of it? It sounds very unfair, but, you can see why people get led into that sphere of trying to retire in India during a series where there's this massive kind of send-off.
Farewell tours don't always come off, do they? And it can sometimes be unhelpful to the team that you're in. I mean, I think, Jim, we all agreed, didn't we, that Dhoni deserved to be in the India squad for the World Cup just gone. But, is this constant speculation now about his retirement helpful to the side, or have you just got to say, time to move on?
I suppose the great players, the big personalities, can choose their time of departure. They can't do it always in Australia. Tendulkar managed it, so it sounds to me as though Dhoni's stage managing the whole thing to make sure that he does get, Charu would describe it, felicitations from his fans at the appropriate time. So just let him do what he's going to do, and the selectors, I'm sure, will look after him.
Well, it would be fair to say that, the selectors are going to play second fiddle here to Dhoni's own decision-making, which sounds strange. But generally speaking, nobody really had the luxury of choosing their time. And if they felt that, the selector said he doesn't deserve a space, he was gone. It leaves a little bit of rancor for sure among players as well. And in India, certain players have been not chosen, or should we say the careers have ended, and they felt that they were badly treated, even though they had 10, 15-year careers. So maybe the selectors in this case are once again saying, let him, for heaven's sake, exit and ride out into the sunset rather than us sacking him, because the wash, it would be quite terrible for the selectors, because people say, who are you? You're nobodies, and Dhoni should choose himself. So there is a little bit of defense here for the selectors, or should we say they're playing a defensive game, not really wanting to take that decision. But I have no doubt that he only has one more series in him and no more internationally for India.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
This summer marks 25 years since Brian Lara took English county cricket by storm. Signed by Warwickshire as an overseas player, the West Indian batsman proceeded to rewrite the record books with a series of astonishing performances. The climax? His legendary 501 not out, still the highest first-class score in history. Lara's heroics helped Warwickshire to an unprecedented treble of domestic titles in 1994, and it's inspired a new book by former BBC cricket reporter Pat Murphy and a feature film that's being released in August. I've been speaking to Lara's Warwickshire teammate Tim Munton, who explained that the left-hander wasn't even the club's first choice as overseas player.
We'd signed Manoj Prabhakar, the Indian all-rounder, and we'd been doing particularly well in one-day cricket, and I think Dermot Reevers, the captain at the time, was sort of rightly thinking, we could sort of complement the team with another top international all-rounder. That would give us great chance of winning one-day trophies, particularly. Obviously, we weren't not thinking about championship, but that was the reason we'd signed Manoj. I'm not sure exactly the timings of it, but during the course of sort of pre-season time, India were playing in New Zealand, and he turned an ankle and damaged ligaments in his ankle, to which we knew we were going to miss him for a good chunk of the season. So the club, in their wisdom, decided that we should consider alternatives, and that alternative turned out to be a genius little left-hander that was just starting to make the world wake up and realise who he was, and we got him absolutely at the start of his amazing journey.
And now Brian Lara, absolutely still at the crease, under his maroon West Indian cap, looking up towards Lewis. 365 not out. Lewis bowls to him. It's short. He hooks it, and he has broken the world individual test record with a hook for four to the mid-wicket boundary.
So off the back of that record-breaking 375 against England, and he came in and absolutely hit the ground running, because there were 6 centuries in 7 innings. But when you first saw him play up close and with your own eyes, what did you think about him?
It was just so special, because it started even before that, his impact, if you like, because the press conference to announce his arrival, if you like, it only arrived I think it might be the day before, most 2 days before the first game, and you will have known in the good old days of the Edgbaston players' dining room, where most press conferences were held at the end of the day's play.
Wasn't a big room.
It wasn't a big room. So, but the club decided that they knew there was going to be a big turnout, so ended up with using the main hospitality suite. And there was probably 200-300 members of the media from all sorts, the traditional cricket media, but lots of new faces as well. So, if you like, that buzz and hype around the club was created before the first game. But even on the back of that, he scored 140 odd in his first innings against Glamorgan, and we all saw with our own eyes then what sort of unravelled over the next particularly 2 months for Brian, with, like you say, the 6 centuries in 7 innings, included in the middle of all that, the 501.
Morris comes in, right arm over again. Lara this time strikes out, and that's going through for 4 runs through the covers, and Lara takes off his helmet, holds the bat aloft, and everybody at this ground, and there are people running on the pitch here at Edgbaston, are standing and applauding. If they're not standing and applauding, then they're running and sprinting to meet Brian Lara. The bails are taken off the stumps, and Brian Lara is 501 not out. It is the best batting performance ever in the history of first-class cricket throughout the world.
There you go. I mean, it was amazing, wasn't it? I mean, Brian Lara, county cricket, suddenly there was this rock star status, not only to Lara, but almost the game. The news making front and back pages, and people would be following the game. And if you couldn't watch it, because back then, live streaming wasn't a thing, you'd be on CFAX, I think page 360, which was the text service that you could get up on your TV screen. It was amazing. I wonder what your memories were, Jim and Charu, of that time. Did news filter through to wherever you were in the world? And did you find yourself trying to follow? Is he going to get that record?
I did, yes. But yes, well, Lara has sort of put a big pencil line under his name again, as he's done in Test cricket. And I suppose when we think about this era of the game, he has been, in many ways, the dominant batsman. We'll talk about Tendulkar, but for me always, Brian Lara has been the fellow I would rather watch, and that's there in the numbers. And just the most extraordinary talent from the time I saw him score that 277 in Sydney.
Yeah, didn't I just mention the word patience some time back? Not that Lara had too much of it, by the way, because he scored so quickly. But in a sense, it's a shame that he wasn't playing for a country such as, say, India, because his exploits would have pole vaulted him into some kind of stratosphere. And it would have been, just even more memorable and unforgettable. But, no one is denying his special genius ability. And even though through most of his career, he was always put into a class of two, along with Tendulkar, as we well know. But, Tendulkar may not have scored, he or Lara may not have scored as many as Tendulkar, but his scores were Himalayan. I mean, these big scores is something that even Tendulkar probably regrets, because amongst his incredible achievements, Tendulkar has never even gotten a Test 300. So in that sense, just this mountain of runs during one innings, it makes for a very special ability. And the fact that he got them quickly and in an attractive fashion was obviously the key here, not sort of plodding along for 500. That nobody would have taken and nobody would have appreciated as much as just the manner in which he got runs. And no wonder at the end of his career, it was a very short speech, unlike other career-ending speeches, where I think, if I remember correctly, his main sentence was, it was a question really, a statement, "Did I entertain?" And boy, Lara, you did.
So, Charu, if you're going to put Lara v Tendulkar...
Please don't get me
Go on, come on. No sitting on the fence.
Well, all I can say is I think Tendulkar himself acknowledges that Lara was just a genius. So, that we'll have to perhaps repeat here. The fact that Brian Lara was, in terms of his genius ability, in a class of one. Tendulkar, of course, a very special cricketer, many, many more runs over much more time. But even he, I think, at times has admitted that Lara was just probably the better batsman.
Yeah, sometimes you can't quite compare like for like because they're not alike, and that's the beauty of it. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped on All India Radio. You can keep in touch with us on Twitter via #BBC Stumped, or download the Stumped podcast from your favourite podcast app. Thanks to my co-hosts Jim Maxwell and Charu Sharma, and to you for listening. Join us again next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.